10 more predictions for the UK election 2017. This video is a response to the last prediction video I made on day 1 of the snap election announcement. Now campaigning has gotten underway and we have had the local elections, I can make a much more informed list about the way this election will turn out. Number 10. Political talent is thin on the ground. So we basically have a choice between a leader with no party who finds it difficult to unite people and who struggles to create an argument and get a message across, or a leader who was there because nobody else wanted the job. Theresa May is also really bad at being upfront, transparent and honest. Remember the whole Brexit means Brexit argument? At that time, all parties were scrambling around for ideas. The Conservatives withheld their plan from the public, while Labour accused the government of not having a plan while not showing one themselves. Since then, we've had the same Brexit policies outlined, but issues surrounding other policies have failed to sell. Theresa May fails to be seen as anything other than an inevitable winner, and Jeremy Corbyn fails to be seen as anything other than a loser, and that ultimately makes the public feel like they're voting for a conclusion that's already written. Of course, there could still be a surprise before you dislike. Number 9. Policy doesn't matter. So Labour struggle to get their policy across at the best of times. If this election is going to be a foregone conclusion, then Theresa May has a lot more leeway in what she can bring up and do. Even if she only just maintains her current majority, she has the chance to say anything radical, good, bad, or completely bonkers without a legitimate challenge. But I don't think she will, as she doesn't seem to be a fan of being challenged, after refusing to take part in the TV debates. So it's more likely all policy from all parties will have a strong political rhetoric, rather than carefully, well thought out inventive ideas. It's the rhetoric that matters. Number 8. This is the rhetoric election. So now we've eliminated talent and policy, that only leaves one thing left to vote on, and that's rhetoric. For Theresa May, that rhetoric is strong and stable government. For Labour, it's anything but the Tories. For the Lib Dems, it's Brexit is bad for the country. For the SNP, it's obviously independence. For UKIP, it's make Brexit happen. And for the Greens, well, their rhetoric struggles to come across because they're small, but it's obviously environmental and anti-Brexit. Let's start with unpicking Theresa May's rhetoric of strong and stable government. If the EU keeps on threatening with large Brexit costs, then it helps Theresa May's campaign, as it makes sense to have a united government against the EU. But if Theresa May keeps talking about thrashing her opponents, then the media, or her opponents, just have to mention democracy, and the whole idea of a one-party state starts to play in the public's mind, and against the Conservatives. Labour's rhetoric of anything but the Tories has the equally as consequential rhetoric of anything but a no-deal we get from the Brexit negotiations. That's why Brexit is overshadowing their campaign. Putting previous leadership quarrels, bad media coverage and mistakes aside, the public won't settle for a rejection of Brexit, an incompetently run economy, or a divided party. So if they can't prove how they are going to make Brexit a success, then they won't be in power, and they have a lot of catching up to do. The Lib Dems, however, going against Brexit makes them seem like another one-issue party, not a party of power or opposition. They will probably bring out more rounded policies in the future and could pick up Remain votes, but many feel their chance of stopping Brexit ended when the referendum was decided. As has UKIP's. They made the vote happen, we voted for it, and now the UK is independent from the EU. So what's the point in him? Nigel Farage had personality, charisma, and changed the nation, so much so Paul Nuttall will never outshine his shadow. The Conservatives have now merged with UKIP. The SNP are always banging on about independence, and so are the media and all other parties when talking about them. They know any retaining of seats is something they will push against Westminster for another referendum. But I just mentioned their opposition. Another referendum. Democracy again. Playing politics in a way that people just want normality again. So you have all the parties fighting against the establishment. The only difference being Theresa May is fighting against the EU while the others are fighting against her. Which leads me on to my next point. Number 6. Left is right and right is left. So since taking office, Theresa May has emphasised the need for making a country for all, and for the just about managing people, essentially using centre-left rhetoric to gain potential Labour voters, while Jeremy Corbyn is on the far left. Jeremy himself is not going anywhere near the right. He's anti-Trident, anti-capitalist, etc. But Brexit was a fairly right-leaning vote, in which both of the main parties have agreed was about controlling immigration. Furthermore, the idea of a tolerant left became challenged in Jeremy Corbyn's two leadership battles and the anti-Semitism row. Labour seems more intolerant of itself than anything. Number 5. The election will be unexpectedly, unpredictably, predictable. So we've had Brexit and Trump, and they both took the world by surprise. But now I feel the public are bored of the unexpected and want stability. It doesn't necessarily mean the Tories will gain a huge majority. It could be much smaller, but I expect things to go as planned, for now at least. Which brings me on to my next point. Number 4. There's a good chance the UK won't get a deal on Brexit. So we've seen the way the EU has reacted to the UK by threatening a 100 billion bailout bill, and the UK has responded by saying they're influencing the UK's election. We aren't even in talks yet, and we're already falling out. I'm not Ramona at all. I voted leave. If Britain really doesn't get a deal, all parties would oppose the government, and the SNP and independents would seem very likely. For simply just how threatening this is, chances are we're going to end up with some kind of deal that whoever is in power sells as an excellent deal, but everyone who's not says it's not. Number 3. The idea of a one-party state may stick around. So let's say the election has happened. Labour lost. Jeremy Corbyn may still stick around or may not. UKIP has essentially become the Conservatives. The Conservatives may have accepted free movement of people and everything the Brexit vote was against, but we get some form of a deal. Labour can only say they agree with the deal if the economy would be affected without one. Even a Labour without Jeremy Corbyn is not an effective opposition in this scenario. They simply have nothing to oppose. The Lib Dems can only argue to reverse the last 2 years of negotiations. The SNP can no longer argue for independence if Brexit equals the same kind of UK or a similar kind of UK. So the UK remains with nothing to fight against and no opposition. Number 2, the NHS is essential. So the biggest burden on the UK economy is the NHS, and Britain is expecting 350 million that once went to the EU to go towards it. But we now know that figure is a lie, and we may not save at all from Brexit after all the bills are added up. That and a fluctuating economy could put strain on public services, and the one public service already straining is the NHS. If it fails more, it will almost certainly give a future Labour a foothold for a return to government. Could be a reason for voting Labour now, but voters believe Brexit is just as essential. Number 1. Don't underestimate the young. Young voters are more likely to vote against Brexit, for Scottish independence, and for Labour, but we know they are much less likely to turn out in elections. Will the online backlash and crying face emojis we saw after the Brexit vote or Scottish vote turn out for this vote? Will the anti-Brexit protesters turn out? Will everyone else who voted for Brexit turn out, or has enthusiasm for it drained? I suspect controls on immigration and the need for a democratically elected representative is still rife in the country. If between now and then any of the parties manage to sell anti-immigration and good democracy in a package that doesn't include a threat to the economy, they will win. The SNP do it with independence, the Lib Dems do it by having the UK as it was, UKIP, Labour and the Conservatives do it with different forms of Brexit. It's the B word that counts. The UK is enthusiastic about it, but also scared of it. Fear has not yet plagued the voter. If anything, they have become more enthusiastic after all of it was created by them. We all know these guys will win, so it has to succeed. Thanks for watching. Let me know your opinion in the comments below.